In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can make an enemy AI turret. This one will fire upon you once you're in a certain range or proximity. So stick around for that. Alright, you've lasted through the intro. Now I want to make sure that you can keep track of the tutorial properly. So I like to start off with a brand new project. I'm going to go ahead and create this project and we'll hop right into Unity. It's loading right now on my other monitor. I'll bring it over. Here it is. And while this loads, check out the quick announcements and I'll be right back into the tutorial. Quick announcements, guys. This will only take about 10 seconds of this video and then right back to the tutorial. Got a new YouTube channel. It's called Legion Show, where we talk about hard times and just basically trying to make the world smile again and everybody be happy. I know a lot has been happening, just a lot of bad news all across the internet. And so this channel is dedicated to just addressing some of the not so talked about topics and basically bringing light to it. Doing some interviews with people that's going through a tough time, just hearing their opinion on how they get through it all, just to help motivate other people that's going through those similar kind of things, and basically just memes and making people smile again. So check it out. Show your support by subscribing to that channel as well. Next announcement, just real quick, is a book released on Amazon. It's a digital book. Just go ahead, if you have the Kindle Unlimited, it's completely free. It is $0.000. So hey, why not? And definitely leave a review. Next announcement. So you guys already know that I'm a teacher and I teach kids to code. So if you guys are ever interested in learning to code, whether you're a kid or an adult, check out the online code coaching and just go ahead and send me an email to info@onlinecodecoaching.com. And the final announcement is ModStorm. What is ModStorm, you ask? You didn't ask. Well, basically, you don't have to download anything, you don't have to code anything, but you'll be making video games straight from the web, cross-platform, just like Roblox, except better. So it's going to be a very, very big deal. You don't want to miss out. I'm going to be making some videos showing you how to use it coming soon. So subscribe for those. Back to your tutorial. Thank you for waiting. Alright, so now that Unity is loaded up, I'm going to use one of the Unity third-person controllers to kind of speed things up with this. So I'll go ahead and check out my assets and I'll go ahead and search for a third. You can find this one here on the asset store. It's just a starter asset by Unity with a third-person controller. I'm going to import this into my game so I have a character that I can run around with, and then we'll go right into building our turret from scratch. Alright, so once the Unity assets as imported, you'll see that there is this little pop-up that's talking about the new input system and how it needs to be disabled, enabled, old one, blah, 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 blah. So, you're going to hit yes on this, but it will disable the old Unity input scene and it may restart your Unity project. See, it's quitting Unity now and it's going to restart my project. So my project is loading up again. Keep in mind that this does disable the old input system, so if you're doing this in an existing project, you might find that some of your buttons and your inputs that are tied to the old system will stop working. But I got you, don't worry. Once your project loads back up, just go ahead and I'm going to show you how you can make sure that both the inputs are working from the old and the new. You go to Edit and go down to Project Settings. Go to Player right here, and in these drop down menus you want to go to the very last one that says Other Settings right here, Active Input Handling. It's set right now to the new. You can set it back to the old, or the best solution would then just be to set it to both. At that point you hit apply. It may restart your Unity system one more time. And it did. Alright, so that will fix your problem if you were using an existing project I do recommend though, start getting into using the new input system, as it is very easy for cross-platform. So check out videos on using the new input system. So from what I've downloaded, there is a sample scene in here somewhere. Let's see if I can find it. Right. And in here, I already have a third-person controller that's set up to work. I can look around, walk around, hold shift to run, and jump around as well. So this is amazing. All I need now is to set up my turret so we can get on with this tutorial. Let me go do some cosmetic work on this scene because there's a little bit too much happening. I'm going to delete a few structures, and then we'll go ahead and build our turret from scratch. So there you have it. I've made my makeshift turret, just a cylinder, cube on top, and a other cannon barrel part, just showcasing where the bullet will come from. Keep in mind that the forward facing of the turret is the blue arrow. So when I clicked on the cube that I placed on top, the blue arrow is pointing that way. So it makes sure that the cylinder part, that is the barrel, comes out from that direction, because the head, which is the top part here, that will be the part that rotates around for aiming purposes. So you want to make sure that when you tell it to look at the player, this is the front that's going to turn all the way around and point at the player. So you want to make sure that the head, the barrel, is coming out from that side. Hopefully that didn't take too long, because now we're about to actually get into the meat of what we're trying to do. We have a working character that can run around. Now we have our little makeshift turret. All we need now is some code on this bad boy, and boom, we're in it. So let's go ahead and start by creating our new code and add this to the turret. I'm just going to drop everything in here in the assets. There's really just a tutorial, so there's no need for me to be all organized, but I do recommend that you put your script in your script folder. So I'm going to call mine turret control, and I'm going to put this on my turret once Unity is done processing the script. Jump it on the turret, and it's time to crack it open. Why do I say crack it open like it's an egg or something? But it's not an egg. So script is here, and we're going to do some coding. All right, so script will be really simple here. A couple of references we're going to need. We'll need a reference to the player. You don't want to make this public, just in case later on you're going to mass produce these AI enemies, or maybe even spawn them in. So you just want to go ahead and make it private. So we need a transform reference to the player, so the enemy knows who to target. And I didn't go ahead and make it public because, like I said, you might want to spawn these in later. So when they spawn into the game, the start function will fire off. Or if you just mass produce them again, the start function is where you're going to tell it what player is. So we're going to tell it here that player. I just call it underscore player because I like that better. So I've renamed the variable, the reference to underscore player. And I'm going to say underscore player is equal to a game object that is in the scene. And if we can just find that game object, with a certain tag, right? So don't click the find game objects because that's plural, but find a game object singular, and now just provide it with the tag player, like so. Once you find that game object, go ahead and give us the transform and store that transform information in underscore player. So now this will automatically target that player and is transformed. One thing to note is that the player himself, you will need to come in here into your scene and find your player. This is the one that came with my demo assets here. And I just want to make sure that it has the tag player. And the tag is spelled player with a capital P. I knew that ahead of time, and that's why I also made sure that my tag here is player with that capital P. Now we're just going to go ahead and create some variables that will help us with detecting the distance of where the player is. So we'll create a float. Again, doesn't have to be private or public. We'll just go ahead and call it this for distance. Keep in mind, if you don't write public, it is private by default. So when I said it doesn't have to be private or public, I just mean you don't have to write private or you don't have to write public here, but it is private by default. Alright, so I have distance, or a variable called distance, which is a number. So in the update that happens all the time, you already know how the update works, I assume. You're just going to tell it what distance is going to be changing to on the fly continuously throughout the game. So distance is going to be a distance. So we're going to head and tap into the vector3 that has this functionality that gives us a distance of two positions that we will have to give it. Okay, so you see the IntelliSense give us a little pop-up there telling us it needs a and a B, a vector3. So it needs an A and a B location or position. So first one is going to be the player. So that's a transform, and we go into the position. Second one is going to be the turret's location. So we simply say transform dot position. Anytime you mention transform, it automatically is referring to the transform of the object that this script is on. And we do know that this script is on the little makeshift turret that we made over there. Okay, so now that information will be constantly refreshing and placed into distance. So we have the distance in here between these two objects. Now all we need is some sort of logic to say, hey, if that distance is less than a certain number, that means that we are close enough. Let's go ahead and make that number. We'll make this one public so we can adjust it inside Unity. So public float, and we're gonna call it how close, or you can say max distance or something like that that makes sense to you. So now for that logic, back into the update. If that distance that we're getting continuously is less than or equal to our like max distance, so my little how close, then we will tell the turret, so the head of the turret in particularly, to turn around and look at the player. Let's make a transform reference to the head. So we gave public, it's a transform, and we'll just call it head. Okay, we're gonna tell that head to look at the underscore player. And we're ready for a test. I'll save, head back into Unity. Don't forget, once you head back into Unity, don't hit play immediately. You do have to do the configurations that you just made. So back onto the turret over here. I have the script. I have the how close. I'll say how close. I'll say 20. And then the head, which is the head part here of the turret that I want to rotate to look at the player. I'm going to make that reference and link it to this right here. So the reference is head and it's linked. So now when my code says head look at player, then that means the head here is going to rotate and look at player anytime I'm within that 20 for my distance. Okay, there we go. Oops, let me just change that. There you go. The rotation. There we go. Okay. So let's hit play for a quick test. And you can see it's not looking at me or anything. I'm gonna go a little bit closer to it here. Yep, and there it is. Now it's staring at me as I walk around. So maybe a little bit closer if I want to do closer. Now when I'm far away, it doesn't care about me. I'm not close enough. But as soon as I get closer, boop, it cares about me. Okay? And that's controlled using this number here, how close. So feel free to work with that and see how you really like it. Cool beans? The next step here is you want it to shoot. Let's go ahead and make a shooting functionality. We'll go ahead and start off by making a new function, and we'll call it shoot. In here, we'll simply have it instantiate a object and propel that object forward. So let's create a public reference to what that object is going to be. It's going to be a game object, and it'll be our projectile. So underscore, I'm just calling it projectile, like so. Okay, so we're going to spawn that in when we shoot. So I'll just say instantiate. What we're going to instantiate, what we're going to clone, the original object, that, and where we're going to spawn it. We'll say, we don't want to say transform. We don't want to say the turret's position, because turret position, we'll just place it at, let's see, let me show you what I mean. We'll just place it like right here at the very center of the origin, so where this box is. And if we say spawn at the head, it will spawn it right here as well. I kind of want to spawn it at the barrel location, about like right here, like right there. So in like maybe in the center there. So I need a reference now to the barrel position. So let's go ahead and make that before I continue. Since it's going to be a transform, I don't have to make another line, so I already have this line here. What I'll just do is put a little comma, and then I'll just say barrel, like that. Alright, so it's two variables that are the same. So now I'll say I want to spawn this at the barrel dot position, right? The barrel's position, and then as for rotation, I will simply say transform dot rotation. I kept in mind that the barrel has a very odd rotation. Notice that the forward arrow, which is blue, is pointing down. So I don't want my projectile to also say its forward is down. I want it to say its forward is the same direction as this object is pointing the original object. The object with the script on it, alright? Hopefully that's not too complicated, but you remember transform right here and right here simply refers to the transform that the script is on. So use that rotation, but then use the barrel's position. Spawns that in there. Afterwards, we want to simply just add some force forward. Forward. So in order to do that, we need to capture the clone that we have just spawned into a variable, so we can tap into it and add force forward. So let's go ahead and put all of this into a game object that we can just call something like clone. So game object clone equals that clone we just spawned. And now to push it forward, we say clone dot get component. And let's assume that we have a rigid body on it in order to add force forward. So we say rigid body, and then you will add force like so. And then it needs which direction you're adding force. We'll tell it to add force again in the transform forward, so in the forward facing direction of the turret, times a certain force, like a certain number for your force. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a pretty high number here. Feel free to create a variable for this. That's one thing I'm not gonna show you. I'd like for you to try it. Maybe make another float variable somewhere up here that represents your projectile speed, and replace my hard-coded 1500 with that variable. But that is it for the shooting functionality. Now you just got to tell it to shoot when it's looking at the player. The refresh rate up here will make it shoot a lot, like a bit too fast. So if you simply put this there, you could run into some problems. So we do need some sort of shooting fire rate. But for testing purposes, let's go ahead and check out how ridiculous this will be. So we're going to save our code and head back into Unity to set this up. Alright, so back into the script, we have two new empty variables here that we need to connect. The projectile and the barrel. We understand that the barrel is going to be this, so I'll connect it. Another thing is when it spawns in the barrel, the collider on the barrel could cause some problems, so we're just going to turn it off or remove it, so it's going to spawn right in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sphere that's a child object of the barrel, a little ball here, and this is where the projectile would normally spawn. So we see an example, and then it would just kind of fly forward. So I'm going to actually use this sphere. I'm going to detach it from the child object, so dragging it out, and I will call it projectile, and I will add a rigid body to it. Follow me here closely, and I will turn off the use gravity. Then take it, drag it into the folder. Now it's a prefab. I can delete it from the scene. Don't go ahead of me here. You need to take it now, the turret, and link it to this empty reference. So take it from the prefab that you made inside of the folders, not inside the scene. It is removed from the scene. Take it and connect it here. So it's going to spawn these in and shoot them forward. Let's see how it works. It's going to be ridiculous based on the refresh rate. We're going to fix that right afterwards. So let's go ahead and get shot at by a ridiculous amount here. Look at me and look at that. As soon as we get close, so we walk away and it stops. When we get close, look at us and go nuts. Well, what can I say? That was fun. Well, let's clean it up by using a fire rate system. Keep in mind, you can use these scripts that I'm showing you for different purposes. You don't have to use them for exactly what we're doing right now. But the fire rate will help us make it so that it shoots at a slower pace, one by one. We also need a way to clean them up, because when they fly off into space, they will be traveling forever. And as long as they exist, your game will become larger and larger and larger the further away they travel. So you do need some safe cleanup kind of script, some little bit of a cleanup script that will help you get rid of the lingering debris or in this case projectile. So keep those in mind for other things that you're creating in Unity. All right, you got to be a good coder. Let's go back into Unity and make that script. Okay, so now we have the shoot script. Let's go ahead and create the fire rate. I'll head right up here and create a few variables that will help us with the fire rate. I'm going to create two floats. So I'll say float public and float. Only one of them needs to be public, but I'm going to be lazy and just put them both public. We need our fire rate, and we need basically our next fire, like when we shoot again, next fire. Then as I'm calling this function, I'm still going to check to see that it is ready to fire before I call the function. So I'm simply just going to put an if condition here that says if, and I'll say time dot time is more than or equal to, more than or equal to our next fire, right? If that is the case, then we'll go ahead and shoot, but we're going to do something else before we shoot. So we're going to go ahead and just move the shoot into this condition. If time dot time is more than or equal to fire rate, or fire, or next fire. So what is next fire going to equal to? We'll say next fire is equal to time dot time plus 1f divided by our fire rate. Just like that. Then it shoots. With that, just go ahead and save. Also, let's clean this up. So like I said before, we don't want the clone to travel just forever into our zone. So we're going to head and just put a little delete command here that says delete clone. But then with an optional comma here, we're just going to add a time of death. So we're going to say about 10 seconds later. And that will do it for us. Let's save and head back into Unity, and that should do it. So in the turret control, we have two numbers here. You don't want to mess with the next fire. That will fix itself. So that's why I said that only one of these needs to be public. And as for the fire rate here, let's try something like 15 and see how it looks. You can see it's much slower. You can watch this number here as it climbs up. Now, if I turn this 15 down, maybe 2, you can see it fires slower. Alright, let's say I put 1.5. Now it's not going the right direction. We can see that there are still some issues here. It's not going the right direction. Okay, so my fault. I know what I'm doing wrong. So sorry about that. We made mistakes. Hopefully you caught this before I did. But the transform that we spawned at is on the main object. And if you remember, the main object is actually the feet, not the head. The foot is not rotated at all. So it's the head that should be the rotation. So we already made a reference to the head. We just gotta change it now and put, we're spawning this at the rotation of the head, and then using the head forward, and that should fix it. Let's recap the code real quick. A couple of variables up top. Using the start function to reference to the player. Check if we're within the distance, and then go ahead and make it look at the player. Using the fire rate here to shoot. And then cleaning up the clones after about 10 seconds. You can change those numbers if you want. You can also go ahead and make some sort of on-trigger enter. Something to happen when the bullet hits the player, but this is where we're going to end this. You can see now it shoots right at me. You can definitely increase the impact, the fire amount here. You can turn that up to go really fast. You can also lower, you can also turn up or lower the fire rate from within the editor. So right here I have 15. You can go ahead and 1.5, something like that. So it doesn't shoot as fast as I have it. So from here, it's really up to you what you do. You can see there, it shoots only when I'm at a certain distance. So if I go too far away, it doesn't shoot anymore. And these balls here will clean themselves up after 10 seconds. Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully it wasn't too drawn out, but this channel is dedicated to people who do know a little bit Unity and those who don't. So I tend to explain things a little bit too much sometimes. It's a habit of being a teacher. Anyways, thank you so much for your time. And you have a wonderful day. I'll catch you in the next one.